Great.
Hi, it's Caregiver Stress again, and I am back with my Geriatric Care 1 YouTube series, YouTube channel, and we're doing Caregiver Assessment, and we are now on the 7th section of the playlist. And we're talking about Mrs. Handy, who's a family care provider, and I'm going to use her in the context of how do you do a caregiver assessment? And what are you assessing in the first place? You're assessing caregiver burden and the caregiver's health status and the types of care, and that means types. Are they doing ADLs? Like Mrs. Handy is changing her father's clothes and his diapers. That's an ADL, activity of daily living. You know, you got to learn to change your clothes. So that's the type of thing that you're going to assess. And IADLs, and you know, he can't do any of that, answer the phone or, you know, write checks. It's impossible. He has vascular dementia. And then we're going to look at personal health. Mrs. Handy can't sleep, and so her health is deteriorating. I mean, how many of us went crazy when we had a baby? The first baby, the second baby, they stay up all night. Well, she's got the same situation with her dad. You know what sleep deprivation does. And barriers to caregiving, you're going to look at that. And what was her barrier? She's acting like she's 19 when her dad is 45, when she's in her 40s and her dad, you know, say is in his mid-60s, 70s, whatever. So she's got two dads, and she's acting like it's the first dad. He'll say, no, 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 I'm not going to go to sleep early. And she's going to go, okay, Dad. No. And we're going to look at caregiving skills in a caregiver assessment, and Mrs. Handy has all the skills to do this. She doesn't give injections or anything like that. She has the skills. And their ability to continue care, that's what you do in a caregiver assessment. She has called you because she's over it. She's going to place her dad. So that's a big problem. That triggered this assessment. You're going to look at the context, which is living arrangements. The dad lives with her because she's the oldest daughter, and the cultural needs. You know, she's not of another culture, so that doesn't come in. But you do an assessment of a caregiver. You're going to look at, you know, their language and getting a language, you know, newspaper, et cetera, et cetera. And then formal support. She has an adult daycare center for him to go to. She already has some. But she needs to bring in informal supports. So what we're going to look at in a caregiver assessment is also stressors. And a stressor is like what causes caregiver stress. But we're mostly going to look at caregiver reaction. This is where, like, big word, I got to give you an example. So we're going to look at one of the stressors that is role overload. Well, how many roles does this woman have? She's a wife. She's a mother, she is a worker, she is the adult daughter taking care of her father. That's role overload. You can't do all that stuff. And Perland, he's a famous writer on caregiver assessment, caregivers in general, says there's primary stressors and secondary stressors. Well, what do I mean by that? The primary stressor is the dad won't go to bed at night one time, and so she can't sleep. That's the primary stressor for Mrs. Handy. The second stressor is subjective, and that's how Mrs. Handy reacts to this. How does she react to it? She goes back to 19. Dad, okay, you know, if you don't want me to go out with that boy, I won't. That's back to 12 now. Not 19. But she, you know, grew up in another era, and her dad is 47 or so, and so, you know, she's in another era. But so what's the result of that? She's not changing, and that's what has to happen with her. She has to change. And then you're assessing not only these stressors, but the caregiver stress in general, which is the caregiver is knocked off balance. It's most of the time when anybody calls you, they're going to place their mother and father because they can't care for the older person anymore. She can't. They can't care for themselves. This woman is sleep deprived. Think of when you ever had a baby. And I will see you next time. Go to my website, kathycrest.com.